This series contains adult language and descriptions of graphic violence. Listener discretion is advised.
Cavalry Audio.
Welcome back to Death by Southwest, the podcast where each week I share a different grisly murder story unique to the American Southwest, while my sister and co-host tries to piece together the clues and unravel the mystery behind each of these heinous crimes. I'm your host, Margot, and I'm here with my sister and co-host,
Jenna.
And this is episode 14, which is part 2 of the murder of Katie Sepich. Truthfully, we're recording this after we've already recorded the whole episode.
That is truthful.
That is truthful. But because we already did like the sense of place for Las Cruces on episode 13, we wanted to include something at the beginning of episode 14. So I found a book on Amazon a couple days ago and I bought it, and it's called Serial Killer Trivia, a collection of fascinating facts and disturbing details about infamous serial killers and their horrific crimes by Jack Rosewood. So, I just picked a few things out of this book that I thought are super interesting that I'll ask you. We'll see what you know. And then it has some, additional interesting information.
Interesting.
Wow. The cat is loving you right now. Mm-hmm. We're at my house today without the dogs, just the cat here. And the cat whose name is Cat.
Otherwise known as Pumpkin.
Or wait, what's Cat's full name that you and Michael
we've said this.
Gave him?
Catterson
Pumpkin Wooderson. Yep. Catterson Pumpkin Wooderson.
What a regal name.
We'll have to post a picture of Cat. I think we have pictures of Pilot and Izzy and Henry, all of our dogs, but we don't have any pictures of Cat up there. So I was going to say, we're not going to do the review thing every time. It'll get very tiresome for listeners.
I think you said that last time.
I did say that last time, I think, except for the people, of course, who are being mentioned. But you did ask a question. It was either in the last episode or the last lookup. I can't totally remember. Our listener, Sean Thompson, who he clarified for me that he doesn't hate that we don't know directions or where things are. He said it just kind of makes him cringe. And I think you had said, does he feel like a human GPS for everywhere in the country, everywhere in the world,
right,
or just places he's been? So he responded to that. And he said, I'm very good with pretty much anywhere I've been. I can look at a map and tell where every state is and several countries. I used to be much better with my countries, but that has changed as I get old and don't keep up with it like I used to. So sounds like, anywhere that he's actually been, which I'm guessing is probably a lot of places. I don't know. He's pretty good with directions and like a human GPS, which is just a characteristic that I will never have.
I'm wondering if he's saying as he gets older it fades or whatever because he travels less or because his mind is going.
Well, Sean, if you're listening, there's your follow-up question. Mm-hmm. We're just going to have like a segment, Questions with Sean, the human GPS, every week. Okay, let's get into this. Let's get into a little bit of this serial killer trivia. And I don't think I knew any of this, so I'm saying that to kind of like as a disclaimer for you. If you don't know any of this, don't feel bad. Actually, you should probably feel good if you don't know a bunch about serial killers.
Also, because a reminder to the listeners that this is episode
14.
Mm-hmm. So that means 14 weeks. So that's not 3+ months we've been doing this. Yeah. And again, we're learning as we go.
I don't think we've done any serial killers. We've done murders.
That's true.
But I don't think we've had anybody who's like killed multiple people.
Oh, yes, one. We did the one with the 2 younger girls.
Oh, that's right. David Clements or something, I think. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're right. I don't think that
that's not considered serial. But
we're actually going to find that out. We're going to find that out. So that's perfect lead in to my first question, which is, what's the textbook FBI definition of a serial killer? And obviously, I know you're not going to know it word for word, but if you had to define a serial killer, what would you say?
An individual who is convicted, I don't know if it's convicted, but who murders more than, actually, let me take that back. Who murders multiple individuals within a specific period of time?
Okay, I like that. The FBI defines serial killing as a series of 2 or more murders committed as separate events, usually but not always by one offender acting alone. Which is confusing to me because what does that mean? Like, usually but not always committed by one offender acting alone?
Oh, sometimes maybe it's 2. Maybe
people?
they always do it together as a duo of serial killers, I guess. So it's just 2 plus.
Yeah, 2 plus.
Or 2, period. I could kill 2 people.
2 or more.
And I'd be considered a serial killer.
Mm-hmm. The common belief is that FBI Special Agent Robert Ressler invented the term serial killer during a lecture on criminal profiling in the late 1970s. He was famous for his work in the field of criminal psychology and considered to be the father of modern behavioral profiling. He allegedly used the term when referring to New York serial killer David Berkowitz. That's Son of Sam, I think, right? There's also a number of documented uses of the same or similar terms dating back decades before he ever mentioned it. Apparently in Dorothy B. Hughes' mystery book, A Lonely Place in 1947, she refers to the antagonist as a series killer. So,
well, and it makes me think of like one of the first true crime podcasts I was aware of, and I didn't listen all that much, honestly, so I don't really know, but it's called Serial, right? And isn't it about, is that about a serial killer?
It is not.
Oh, is it about breakfast cereal?
It is not.
Well, then cut that.
Wait a second. So I listened to Serial, and I actually watched the HBO show that came from Serial, I think, and I might get crucified for this, because it's not. It's about a murder of one woman by one, they're high schoolers, I believe. High schoolers or college kids.
Yeah,
it was a long time ago.
First episode.
I remember the guy who was accused, Anon is his name, I think. And I think I don't know what actually ended up happening. He's either still in prison or because of the series, he was actually found, he maintained his innocence the whole time. He maybe was found to be not guilty after a period of time. I'm not totally sure.
We'll have to follow up on that.
We'll have to follow up on that for sure. But I think it was called Serial, not because serial killer, but more in the sense of like it's a serialized series. Like it, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I could be wrong on that.
Multiple episodes.
Yeah, exactly. Like you're waiting to find out what happens each episode. Yeah. So unlike our podcast, which each episode is different.
They do.
Well, part 1s and 2s. Yeah, that's true. I'm going to name a few things, and in relation to serial killers, tell me what you think, how these might relate to serial killers or killing or murder. Socks, microwaves, shovels, scissors, chainsaws, and toilet lids.
They all just kind of maybe fall under the same category.
Yeah, like
say it again. Socks,
microwaves, shovels, scissors, chainsaws, and even toilet lids have all been used to what?
Rid of evidence.
Ooh, that's a good guess. Incorrect.
Get rid of bodies. Parts of bodies.
Create bodies.
Wait, what?
Bizarre items used to kill people that serial killers have used.
Oh, you said create bodies.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
I guess I meant like dead bodies.
Okay, say it again, the full sentence.
The following are bizarre items that have been used to kill others. Socks, microwaves, shovels, scissors, chainsaws, and even toilet lids.
I want to know about... Well, first, actually, socks might be a part of a strangulation or shoving them in the mouth.
Yep.
Microwaves?
That's the one I want to know about, too.
And toilet seat, you just, hit someone?
Yeah, I would imagine. However, most serial murderers stick with guns, knives, ropes, or their bare hands. This was surprising to me. The most unique weapon to be ever used in a multi-homicide case was in Chicago in 1999. I want to ask you, take a guess, but I guess
of what the object was?
Yeah, to use to kill multiple people.
Toilet seat seems pretty unique. I know it's not one of those, I'm guessing.
It's not.
Flashlight.
No, but that's really an interesting guess. A samurai sword.
Oh.
That doesn't seem that unique to me. A sword that is used for killing. Right?
Yeah.
A flashlight's not used for killing. That would be more unique in my opinion. These are just some interesting random facts. According to a Radford University study, serial killers with higher IQs prefer bombs and poison over guns and knives.
Less mess?
Maybe.
I mean, a bomb will make a lot of a mess, but less bloody mess, perhaps?
Or maybe they just, a bomb or poison, you have to like think that through. You have to get your hands on the poison. You have to know the reaction of the poison, how long it's going to take, how much to use. A bomb
is you have to know what's happening.
Exactly.
So you don't blow yourself up.
Right. And so it says then lower IQ serial killers tend to bludgeon or stab their victims. That makes sense to me. Like, there's really not much thought goes into just beating someone to death.
Well, I also wonder if it's first degree versus second degree. So in the moment, you don't plan to kill the person, so you use just whatever's
premeditated
around
or not,
versus premeditated. Most obviously, poison and bomb would be premeditated.
You're not just like accidentally bombing someone to death. Yeah. Next one. What country has the most serial killers?
Okay, let me think for a moment. The US of A or Canada? Oh, yeah.
The US of A is correct.
Yeah.
We stand out far above the rest in terms of serial killers per capita.
And why do you think that is?
Well, I'm going to tell you.
Oh.
Well, I'm going to tell you why this book thinks that it is. So between 1900 and 2016, the US has at least 3,204 serial killers to its name, which is a staggering number compared to other countries. The next country with the most serial killers is South Africa, which has only 167 serial killers in the same amount of time. So 1900 to 2016, 1,016 years.
Right. But how many serial killers in that time frame?
The U.S., 3,204.
Okay. And them 100.
South Africa, 167.
Yeah, my gosh.
Yeah, so almost 19 times as many as South Africa, and that's the next most country. Iceland has one of the lowest crime rates and only has one recorded serial killer in the 1500s. And the Philippines also claims to only have one serial killer, a Catholic priest, between 1816 and 1826. Canada has only seen 106 serial killers in that time, even though the land mass of Canada is 1.6 times larger than the United States.
Also, the population is way less.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. What state in the United States do you think has produced the most serial killers?
I mean, if I'm going off what I just said, something about population, I think like California.
That's correct. California has produced the most serial killers, boasting over 1,000 since the year 1900.
Wow.
During the 1970s, California was dubbed the murder capital of the world.
Well, because that was when Manson and
Zodiac
and
the Night Stalker.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. What's the most common murder weapon for a serial killer?
Their hands.
Okay. What this book claims is that knives are generally considered by the public to be a serial killer's weapon of choice. It's actually third on the list, and the most commonly used murder weapon for a serial killer is a pistol. So after a pistol, the second most common murder method is strangulation.
By hands. Or by anything, I guess.
By anything.
Yeah.
And then stabbing comes in at number 3. Then from there, it's bombing, drowning, poisoning, burning, axing, smothering, and vehicular homicide. Oof, this is a dark conversation. So do you think that the motivations of male serial killers differ from that of female serial killers? And if so...
Overall?
In general.
Yeah.
What would you think that those differences might be?
I don't know. Perhaps women are more crime of passion and males are more power something.
Okay.
That means I'm wrong.
No.
Okay.
And again, this is all according to this book. Who knows? I'm taking this book as like the word of serial killer Bible. But for the most part, it says that men and women tend to kill for very different motivations. Men tend to kill for power, domination, and sexual gratification, while women tend to kill for personal gain.
I mean, but that's kind of what I said. I said power and personal gain. I mean, I don't know what that means. Money. It could mean I want to kill my second husband so I get money.
I would say, and my guess would have been women kill for, I wouldn't say personal gain. I would say
revenge or something.
Yeah, I would think revenge, or I was going to say, what's it called? Saving myself. Like if somebody breaks in. It's,
yeah. Okay. But that's...
What the fuck is that called?
Self-defense.
Self-defense.
But
Thank you.
I think that's different. That's not like...
Totally different.
Yeah. That's self-defense. That's not a murder.
It's not somebody who's going out and looking to murder people. And I guess revenge probably isn't either. So a woman who's going out to kill multiple people, she's not getting revenge on all those people. Like a woman who kills her husband because he cheated, that's revenge.
Yeah.
But that's not serial killing. You're not killing multiple husbands.
Maybe she's killing the people that he slept with. Even,
that's true.
Yeah,
that
could be part of revenge.
So it says, when a woman kills, there is usually an identifiable reason and one that often benefits the woman's life in some way. Financial gain is a huge motivator for female serial killers, as is removing an unnecessary burden from their life. An unwanted husband and his person, exactly what you just said, actually. They also differ in killing methods. Men are more likely to use, what do you think?
A gun.
Guns or knives. And females keep things much more low key. Poisoning is the most common method utilized by female serial killers, followed closely by stabbing and then suffocation.
Well, also think about how men and women, at least the statistics are how they commit suicide. Not that women necessarily stab themselves, but they will poison pills or put a bag over their head. Yep. Men are typically,
right. This is very general,
will use a weapon.
Also, women are much more likely to kill someone they know rather than a stranger, because the desire for lust fulfillment is rarely present in female serial killers, although there are a handful of exceptions, of course. But for men, it's much more like sexual and like that, and that's less present in females, apparently. This one I included because we talked about this a couple weeks ago when we took an Uber. I don't know. This was weeks ago, but we took an Uber and we ended up talking to our Uber driver about like the dangers of driving Uber. So this question is, what Uber driver turned spree killer killed because he claimed the devil spoke to him through the Uber app?
Well, this was a visionary killer.
Very
but
good.
I have no idea his name. You're asking me to tell you his name. Yeah, I have no idea.
Yeah, it was in February 2016. 6 people were killed in Kalamazoo County, Michigan by a man named Jason Dalton. He opened fire in seemingly random locations around the city, an apartment complex, outside a restaurant, and at a car dealership. He had no prior history of mental illness, no prior run-ins with the law, and when they arrested him, he claimed that his Uber mobile app had driven him to commit the mass shootings. He said that the Uber symbol reminded him of the sigil of the Order of the Eastern Star, a Masonic fraternity, and that it took control of his entire body. And then when he pushed the app on his phone, a new app popped up and the devil spoke directly to him through the screen.
I mean, it's creepy and it's sad because that guy needs professional help or did.
Yeah.
Also, Kalamazoo. That's where I went to one of my overnight camps with what's his face?
What's his name? Let's give him a shout out on the show.
Zach Guilford.
Yeah, Zach Guilford. Yeah.
Camp Echo.
And he's on one of my favorite shows right now.
Good Girls.
Good Girls. Love that show. He's also on a show that's on right now, Criminal Minds Evolution, and he's the serial killer in that show.
Well, is that if you're watching
spoiler alert? No.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. He's been on a bunch of stuff.
He's been on a bunch of stuff. He's been in some movies. I saw a preview, or we saw a preview for some movie. I can't remember what it is now. I can't wait to find, I hope I still have it, the picture of him and I, just because I thought he was so cute. And so
he's still cute.
Well, yes.
Yeah.
But I really was infatuated with him.
Yeah.
For those 2 weeks I was at camp. And I was like, hey man, let's take a photo.
Shout out to you, Zach Guilford. With that, we will jump right into episode 14, part 2 of the Katie Sepich murder. And for those of you who are maybe don't remember exactly where we left off, a body was found and Katie's dad had come to Las Cruces. We had just found out at the end of episode 13 that Katie did make it back to her house, but she didn't make it inside. And we will pick up there.
Don't miss what happens next in today's episode. We'll be right back after a short message from our sponsors.
They found Katie's shoes and outside of her bedroom window, which had a missing window screen. And you could see on the ground in the gravel that there had been a scuffle. There had been some type of disturbance there, which indicated to police that Katie had made it to her house and had fought with someone outside of her bedroom window. And while this initially seemed like promising evidence, it ended up not really going anywhere.
They could tell more of what occurred that evening / early morning and also didn't lead anywhere.
Right. Because even though that DNA had been found under her fingernails, when police entered into CODIS, there were no matches. And at the time of the murder in 2003, the state of New Mexico had a law stating that law enforcement could not collect the DNA of a convict or suspect unless they were booked into a state prison.
And if they were, they would be in the CODIS.
Right. But just because someone was arrested, they didn't take their DNA. It was only when they were actually convicted and put in prison that they took their DNA. Yeah.
Oh, weird.
Yeah.
So they just know that people who were fully booked into convicted of, and it was none of them.
And people who were convicted and in prison, booked into prison.
At one point or another, yeah.
Right. That's all they were taking. That's the only time New Mexico at this point was taking someone's DNA. So with no leads, no real suspects, the police decided to turn their attention to the boyfriend.
Joe.
Bischoff. Yeah. Because they had found out recently in an interview with her other friends that Katie and Joe had an argument that night. So they thought, let's start here. And when they interviewed Joe, several pieces of his story raised more than a few eyebrows. Because Joe claimed that as soon as he noticed Katie was missing from that party, him and a friend went out driving around looking for her, which would have been right around the time that she was being abducted. And it was a small town. It was an even smaller neighborhood. I mean, this was like a teeny cute little neighborhood. And it was 3:00-ish in the morning. So if they're out driving around looking for her in this teeny little neighborhood, and this is actually the time she's being abducted, there's a good chance they would have seen something. If they are searching for her, I don't think they were. That's what he told police. And that didn't add up for police. Furthermore, he claimed that he went to her house to check on her while they were driving around.
Joe went to
Katie's
home
to check on her, but he never got out of the car.
So he didn't check on her.
Right. He also told police that he was calling her phone and looking for her over and over again once he noticed she wasn't at the party. But when police retrieved phone records, they discovered that the timeline didn't quite add up. It looked like he was calling her phone during the time that he already had her phone in his possession. Like he knew her. Remember how he told Tracy her phone's here? Yeah. So he was calling
the
her.
next morning he said, don't worry about calling her because she left her phone in her purse in her bag.
Right. And so when they actually found the phone records and saw the time, and I don't have those exact time codes, but saw the times that he called her, he already had her phone and knew she didn't have it. So all of this added up to what police believed was a guilty person trying to build an alibi.
Well, sure, that tips their brains, I imagine, to, potentially he could be guilty.
Right.
It also tips my brain to, he could just be kind of scared AF and like a dumb idiot to not just put it all out there if he wasn't guilty. But
yeah. Well, they had nothing to hold them on. So this is what they were suspecting, but they had nothing to hold him on. 3 days after Katie's murder, he had talked to police. He returned home to his hometown of Gallup, New Mexico, 300 miles away. He assured police he'd be back if they needed anything, though. And they did end up needing more from him. Not long after he left, they asked him to return for another interview and to give a sample of his DNA because they had, found the DNA at this point under her fingernails and wanted to run it against his. But Joe wasn't so willing anymore. He informed detectives that he had retained an attorney and he wouldn't be coming back, and he definitely would not be giving them his DNA.
Wow. Mm-hmm. My first brain says, oh, guilty. And also we've said either which way, get an attorney, and maybe that's just what the attorney advised. I know you know more than me, but right now it could be anything.
You're right. It is what the attorney advised, and his parents were actually the ones who advised him to get an attorney. They got the attorney for him. They said it doesn't matter if you did anything or if you didn't do anything, like you need an attorney.
Totally.
They're definitely going to look at the boyfriend first. So they got him an attorney, and the attorney told him,
stay put.
Yeah, I advised my client not to give DNA because of the way the investigation was being handled. He thought they were kind of tipping it in Joe's direction, and they didn't want him to, or the attorney didn't want him to give them anything that was unnecessary, I guess.
Understood.
But investigators were they kind of had tunnel vision on Joe at this point, and they decided to get creative. They actually went to Gallup and started following him around and hoped that he would throw out a cup or a piece of gum or something that had his DNA on it. But after following him around for a period of time, no such luck.
They couldn't even go into if he lived with his family, their trash. I mean, it doesn't seem that I could follow you around. Forget about your gum or coffee cup. If I know where you live. Anyways, go on.
I mean, I don't know. I didn't find anything on that. Yes, I want to say, yeah, that seems likely. But if he lived with his family, maybe he had siblings, how would you determine it? I don't know. I'm not sure.
Also, maybe that's considered private property. Yeah, and if they don't have a warrant, then they could find that matching DNA perhaps, but it wouldn't be it would be admissible or inadmissible. Not inadmissible. Yeah.
So they didn't have any luck with that, but they felt more and more certain that it was Joe. They couldn't get off of the fact because there was just no other suspects. And they even went as far as to tell Katie's parents that he was their prime suspect, which Katie's parents did not want to believe. They liked Joe, actually. But others were much more willing to believe that it was Joe. So much so that once friends and community members found out that Joe was the police's prime suspect, it became very clear that he was not welcome at the funeral. And he didn't attend.
Because he wasn't welcome or because he didn't want to be there?
Because he wasn't welcome. They didn't want him there. And they made it very clear. I don't know exactly if somebody called, but it was very clear that he was not going to be welcome there. But over 1,000 other people did attend her funeral in Carlsbad, New Mexico. So much so, it was at a church. So much so they had to put speakers outside of the church and people were spilling out into the front of the church. And police saw this as an opportunity to potentially look for other suspects. They knew that Joe wasn't going to be there, but they thought maybe we can find this kind of compact truck that left a tire track. And so they photographed and videoed tires on every car in that parking lot.
I understand that the size of the tire, or the width, or the whatever, matched up to the potentially a smaller truck vehicle. And also, each tire, I believe, has its own kind of quote-unquote fingerprint.
Like a tread pattern?
Yeah. So, maybe they knew that. That would be a thing to know.
Sure. But, my car could have any number of tires would work on it.
That's true. Yes, that's true.
You could know the tire brand. I'm sure they could figure that out.
Your car could have any number of tires on it, but if they can identify what kind of brand of tire that was, they can go around and look at cars that have that brand of tire.
True. That's true. I don't know if they were able to determine the brand or not.
I'm not even asking you. I'm just talking out loud or thinking out loud.
Sure.
That's an aspect here.
Yeah, absolutely.
I also know some cars, if a tire pops, not everyone gets all the new tires, but then they could also still look for one tire.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I think I have 2 tires on the front that are different than the 2 in the back because I've had them replaced at different times.
Sure. Yeah. And if your tire track was in a murder scene, they'd surely be able to find, she has 2 of those tires.
That's true. Either way, they ended up with nothing from their photographing and videoing of the tires at the church parking lot. So now they had another idea. They were so determined that it was Joe that they decided to put a hidden camera at Katie's gravesite, hoping that Joe might feel guilty and come and confess his guilt at her grave. Yeah. And this also ended up with nothing. A sprinkler system quickly went over the camera and deemed it useless, which is, this seems like extreme. You really have to believe that it is this guy if you're going to all these extremes.
Well, that's what I'm a little confused about. Not confused that they were putting him as kind of a main suspect or potential suspect without enough evidence, but in their minds. And also when they went to the funeral, you said they were taking it as an opportunity to investigate other potential suspects, but then right back to Joe.
Right back to Joe. Yep, they did. They went right back to Joe. And within a few months, they came up with yet another idea. And that was that in Joe's interview, one of his interviews with police, he had told police that him and Katie had had sex in her bed, a night or two before she had died. Police thought, we're going to get those bed sheets and we're going to pray that there is some type of DNA on those bed sheets, and we're going to test it against the DNA found under her fingernails.
Oh, okay. Also, when they knew that she was raped, and maybe it was too late, I don't really know how that works. Here come the true crime fans. When they knew that she was raped kind of right off the bat, or soon after, they didn't take any DNA, right? Couldn't have there been DNA from inside her vagina or something?
Yes, they did. In everything that I read, they never specified that. The most I saw was that there was DNA under her fingernails, and they did find DNA in other places of her body, but there was not one. I mean, there's a lot of coverage on this. I did not find one article that said that they did a rape kit or were able to find DNA from her genitals. But at this point, they were hoping that they would find DNA on her sheets and it would match
under the fingers,
under the fingernails, and then that would lead to Joe. So they were able to get the DNA, and within there was a unclear timeline, but it was a few months that it took, and it did not match the DNA under her fingernails.
Wow.
They kind of ruled Joe out. I guess at this point they called his lawyer and said, look, we got DNA off of her sheets. We compared it against the DNA under her fingernails. It's not a match, but we'd like to just 100% eliminate you and confirm that. And I think at that point he did actually come and give DNA, and he was ruled out. So now we're back to who did this, and not only who did this, but how did it happen? Was she killed outside of her own home while she was trying to get inside her window? Was she abducted there and then taken and killed elsewhere and then dumped in the desert? Or had someone tried to abduct her while she was walking home? She ran to her house trying to escape, and then she was taken from outside her window. I mean,
are those the only three options in your mind? Because those aren't.
What are the other options?
Well, I don't know, but you just sparked something in my mind that has nothing to do with how she was killed.
Okay.
But also,
she was killed by strangulation.
Well, right. But remember when you said Tracy came home and realized there was something outside her window?
Her shoes.
Right. And then in the dirt, sand, whatever,
there was a scuffle. Right.
I know she's dead and something awful happened.
Right.
The scuffle outside her window could have been because she left all her shit at the party and she wanted to get in her room.
And she was trying to
climb in the window.
That's true. That's an option as well.
I mean, that doesn't really matter because that doesn't help anything. But I'm just saying that little snapshot of potential scene of evidence could have just been her scuffling around trying to jump in her window.
She kicked off her shoes and tried to get in her window, and it means nothing. That's you know what? I actually didn't even think of that.
Again, that's not really relevant to what the goal of this is, but
sure.
It's a thought.
It is a thought. There weren't a lot of thoughts that came over the next few years because for more than 3 years, this case remained unsolved. There was no additional information. Joe was ruled out. They had the DNA, but it wasn't a match for anyone. There were no additional suspects until mid-December 2006. You don't want to miss what happens next in today's murder story, so don't go anywhere. We'll be right back after a short message from our sponsors. For more than 3 years, the case remained unsolved until DNA from a convicted felon turned up as a partial match to the DNA under Katie's fingernails in mid-December 2006.
What does a partial match mean?
I think it means that not all of the, and I hope this is the right word. I've read a bunch about it. The alleles, I think, all the different markers in DNA. Mm-hmm. Some of them match, not all of them match. And that either means that there's not enough DNA from either party or from one of the parties to confirm 100% that it's a match.
Possible match.
Right, exactly. So it was a partial match. And that's where Gabriel Avila enters the scene. He's a Mexican national who worked as a truck driver at the time of Katie's tragic disappearance and death. Those who knew Gabriel described him as an ordinary guy who seemed quite approachable and had really only had several brushes with the law in the past. But his brush with the law in 2003 would eventually lead to a nearly lifelong sentence for Gabriel. In November of 2003, just months after Katie's murder, 2 women roommates living in Las Cruces noticed a man watching them from outside of their window. They were a little bit freaked out, but once they noticed him and he noticed them noticing him, he kind of ran away and they forgot about it. They were like, weird guy looking at us. He was standing kind of out in the street looking at them through their window. And they forgot about it. Several weeks later, they saw him again outside of their house, peering in through the window.
In Las Cruces.
Yeah. Not far, I believe, from Katie's house. And then over the next coming weeks, they began to notice him more and more. He would be in their bushes. He would be standing across the street. He would be standing behind a tree.
Did they call the cops?
Absolutely. They called the cops. But when they called the cops, they called and reported it to the cops. And the cops, I think told them, call us back next time you see him. But he wasn't necessarily even on their property all the time. He could have been across the street or on the sidewalk.
There's no laws against looking.
Yep. He never did more than that. And usually when they noticed him, he would leave or he would try and hide himself so that they couldn't see him. And then sometimes even when they wouldn't see him, they would hear him. They would hear things outside of their house. They would hear somebody in the bushes. And so they had a small fenced-in backyard and they decided, we're going to try to make sure that we can tell if he's come. Obviously, they're locking their house and things like that. He wasn't breaking in. But so they started locking the back fence and then putting like rocks in specific places so that they could tell.
It would make more noise.
Yeah, that it would make noise. And then when they weren't home, they could tell if he had been there. And he had been there. Yeah, they noticed that they would come home more times than one and the gate would be open and unlocked. The rocks would be moved. There was somebody who was in that yard.
Which kind of feels a little bit reminiscent of scrapes in the dirt or yard around Katie's window.
Yep. So they were kind of living in fear at this point. There was nothing that could officially be done, but they were freaked out and they didn't like being alone in the house, which, to me, even saying that feels weird. They were kind of freaked out. I would have moved out. I would have been gone.
Well, you know what feels weird to me? That there was nothing that could be done.
Yeah.
That's the part that feels weird to me. Normal to be kind of or a lot or medium or any kind of freaked out you want to be. And also that because this person hadn't aggressed on them or committed a quote unquote crime, that nothing could be done. Someone's watching us 4 nights a week, yet, okay, well, let us know when he does something.
Exactly.
That really pisses me off.
Yep. And he eventually did do something.
Yeah, well, there it is.
So one night he somehow made his way, both girls were home, and he made his way inside the home. Luckily, one of the women saw somebody in the home and knew that it wasn't her roommate who was in her own room. And she ran down the hall to her roommate's room, closed the door, and called 911.
I believe someone's trying to break into our house.
Anila? Is the officer there?
I don't know.
You don't know? Somebody inside the bathroom? Anila? I need you to calm down, okay? Anila?
And after 3 terrifying minutes,
Go ahead and step out of the bathroom. I have officers there, okay?
I can't step out. Are you sure?
Yes, I'm sure it'll be okay.
So police did arrive on the scene and apprehended Gabriel, and he had a knife on him, and he was inside of their home. So he was taken into custody and submitted a DNA sample after being arrested and sent to prison at the New Mexico Correction System.
What was he convicted on? Because apparently that's not a crime to be creeping on people.
So he was convicted and sentenced to 9 years for aggravated burglary and intent to commit aggravated assault. So burglary doesn't mean you have to steal anything. He entered somebody's home.
Breaking and entering.
Yeah, unlawfully. Yep. So he was sentenced to 9 years in prison for that. And even though he was, this all happened just a few months after Katie's homicide.
Yeah.
Police weren't able to immediately get access to that DNA that he had to because he was arrested and convicted. So he had to give his DNA, which they were able to match up. So the partial DNA match alerted them to Gabriel.
A possible person.
But they wanted to be 100% sure. So they obtained a search warrant to get a new sample of DNA from him. And on December 11th, the samples proved that he definitely was the killer.
Definitely was the killer. Definitely was the one who had the DNA under her fingernails. Which I guess I guess that means he's the killer. But
Yeah.
I mean,
Random person's DNA and blood under your fingernails.
okay, blood.
Yeah.
Okay.
But okay, fair for you to be questioning it. And you know what? Probably one or more of the police wanted to question this as well. So they decided to interrogate him and question him. He's already in prison. They already have a match for the DNA. And so they interrogated him. And initially he totally denied it, but very quickly broke down and not only admitted to it, but provided details of the murder that only he could have known.
Why do you think that happens for some convicted or soon to be potentially convicted individuals? Why did he break down? He's already in jail.
I think there is a whole host of reasons. I think people get scared because I think detectives are telling him, we have your DNA. We already know you did it. And
So
they'll
they're saying,
convict you
like,
already on that.
If you tell us, we'll get you an easier sentence.
Honestly, what I read, I'm inferring this, I don't know. But from what I read, I don't even think they questioned him hoping to get a confession. They already had him. They knew
They had enough
him.
evidence.
They had enough evidence to convict him. He just kind of opened up.
I don't know I was going to say waffled, but that's the wrong word.
Yeah, I think the list of things that could cause someone to do that, you're scared, you feel guilty, you
think fuck it, you get the fuck it's.
Yeah,
I like to call it the fuck it's.
I like that. Exactly.
It's like I'm already in here. I know I'm getting convicted
as well.
for burglary and whatever else, so fuck it.
Yep. So I think it could have been any number of things. But he did admit to encountering Katie while driving on Roadrunner Parkway around 3 a.m. on the early morning of August 31st. He actually stated that he nearly hit Katie with his truck when she was walking home, and he then proceeded to just follow her home. He witnessed her attempting to get inside of her home through the bedroom window, and he saw her struggle to get in and decided to approach her. He claims that he then lost control of himself and immediately raped her, and then realized she would recognize his face, and so he strangled her with his bare hands. Afterward, he loaded her body into his truck and took it out to the old landfill, where he tried to incinerate it by covering it with alcohol and setting it on fire.
Wow.
Yeah. And so after his confession, investigators located and seized the truck that they believed was used to transport Katie's body to the desert landfill in East Las Cruces. Gabriel had sold the truck, and the new owner consented to its seizure. They also found inside the truck Katie's turquoise ring.
Woof. Mm-hmm. Also, are you going to tell us what kind of truck it was?
I don't know. That's a good lookup list question. I don't know. So, yeah. This all happened in 2006. And finally, on May 3rd, 2007, Gabriel was sentenced to 69 years in prison after he pled guilty to a count each of first-degree murder, second-degree criminal sexual penetration, kidnapping, and tampering with evidence. And that one I don't understand. Do you? Tampering with evidence. What evidence did he tamper with? The truck?
Maybe that he tried to set her on fire, maybe.
Oh, that's true. That's true. I bet you're absolutely right. I bet that's totally right.
Also, 69 years. Wasn't someone else sentenced to 69 years and we thought it was because of every year of her age, the victim's age?
Yes, that was David and Gloria Marmolejo, and he was sentenced to 51 years,
okay.
I want to say, because that was her age.
But why 69? I guess it doesn't friggin' matter.
I don't know. But it was to be served after he finished serving his 9 years for the previous, those two women.
So presumably dead. He'll be dead.
Yeah, a long time. He was born in 1969. He was arrested in 2006 and sentenced in 2007. So
he was 37 when he was arrested. Okay. He'll be dead, presumably. Also,
in prison.
I wonder, and maybe this is just a general lookup list, and I guess it depends on the state or the municipality of why some people convicted of first degree or second degree, whatever murder, get the death penalty versus many, many years in prison.
It's a great question. I think we've had that question before, and I don't think that we ever found an answer. I do think it definitely has to do somewhat with the state. Obviously, some states don't have the death penalty. But I also think that we had speculated on this before, saying maybe it has to do with the severity of the crime, the intention of the crime. That's definitely not a conversation for this, but a conversation for the lookup list for sure. State District Judge Douglas Driggers ordered Gabriel to serve the sentence after finishing his 9-year sentence that he was serving on the aggravated burglary and assault. Gabriel asked to be able to apologize face-to-face to Katie's family at the trial.
I feel like that should be up to Katie's family, whether they want to do it. Obviously it was.
Yeah, it was something that the lawyer said that it was unprecedented, that he had really not seen in such a brutal murder. He'd almost never seen the killer want to apologize. I don't think he was able to.
I'm guessing the family probably was like, no, thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Also, that speaks, I don't know. I have no idea, but like that lets me know like maybe something a little wonky was going on.
Yeah. The district attorney argued that he should not be able to do that because he waited more than 3 years after her murder to confess and did so only when detectives confronted with DNA. So like too little, too late, dude.
Well, and also I feel like a murderer should never be able to do that. Clearly they can't, unless the victim's family, loved ones say, yes, please, I'd like that.
Right.
So it doesn't matter even if he could. It has to be the victim's people that say, yeah, we'd like that.
Right. So remember in the last episode, Stephanie's murder was like eligible for parole and got out for like 8 years or something.
Kind of.
Luckily with this, Gabriel will not be eligible for parole until he serves 30 years of his murder conviction.
And so in 2007, he was still serving his 9 years.
Yeah, he started in 2004, so he served that until
2013. His 9 years were over. So we're in 20.
He's got 20 years left until he's eligible for parole. 2013 to 2023 is 10 years, so he's got 20 years left. He has to serve 30 years of his murder
2043.
Yeah.
No.
So following his sentencing, Dave, Katie's father, said it felt surreal, almost like a dream. We come to terms with the possibility that we may never find out the truth, because obviously for years they had been aware of the gruesome details of the murder, including the fact that she was only a few steps away from her bedroom when she was raped and killed. But the lingering question had been whether or not she knew her attacker. You know, for a while the family thought,
oh yeah, did she?
The police thought she must have known this guy if this maybe happened outside of her home or whatever. It's a small town. But her family never believed that, because they said anyone who, and this is maybe a very parental thing to say, but they said anyone who knew her loved her. They wouldn't have killed her. No one who knew her would have killed her.
Also, based on what you've told me, there's a good chance he didn't. He just saw her.
Yeah.
His little eyes spotted her and then followed her down.
Yep. So that question was finally answered. And her dad said he saw Katie walking home, followed her, and murdered her. It was totally random, and she didn't know him, and he didn't know her. I don't know if that makes it better or worse. I mean, or neither, I guess.
I think neither for me.
I thought this was a good, profound-ish statement that Katie's mother said after the sentencing. She said, because I know we've talked about this, and she said, there's no such thing as closure, but she is ready to move on. Yeah, that's a nice, concise way of saying it.
Well, yeah, I think, I don't know, I've never had anyone close to me murdered, period. I was going to say in such a gruesome way. But I think, yeah, grief lives on, and moving on can happen at the same time.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Gabriel is currently serving at the medium security prison in Lee County Correctional Facility in Hobbs, New Mexico. In the beginning, I don't know if you remember, in the very beginning of this, I had said that this murder not only rocked the tight-knit town of Las Cruces, but it sparked a nationwide movement for change.
I do remember.
And I just want to go back to that and kind of provide some information about that. So since 1997, New Mexico has required that felons who are convicted, like I said earlier, convicted and put into prison, provide DNA samples. But on January 1st, 2007, thanks to the effort of Katie's parents, mostly her mom, New Mexico passed Katie's Law, which expanded the previous laws surrounding DNA to include that DNA samples be collected at the time of arrest on any violent felony charges. And this law was then revised. Katie's law was revised in 2011 to include samples for all felony arrests, which are placed into a database so they can be compared to DNA from crime scene evidence with unsolved crimes.
Was Gabriel previously booked on a felony charge?
I think he was, because I saw several. This is where it gets a little gray.
You can cut this then,
that's fine.
But I'm still curious.
I think I saw several things that had said where Katie's mom had said, if this law had been in place,
we would have got
10 years ago, Katie would be alive.
So either it
so
doesn't
I think
even
he
matter
was,
of violence.
I think arrested on a felony charge.
Right.
Yeah.
At first it was violent, and then it was changed to just a felony charge.
So I think he was arrested on a felony charge, way previous to murdering Katie, because that's the only reason that comment that her mom made would make sense. So yes.
Unfortunately, it wouldn't have changed the outcome of this, but it might have given not closure, but answers to the family sooner if Katie's law had been enacted previously.
That's true. So yes, so the law was revised in 2011 to include samples for all felony arrests. And since Katie's death, her mom, Jan, has helped dozens of other states pass Katie's law. And nearly 16 years after the crime, so that was
2019.
There you go. Katie's mom started a nationwide campaign called DNA Saves, which she's promoting all over the country, trying to get this Katie's law enacted in all 50 states. And I thought this was really interesting. In an article around that time in 2019, Carlsbad newspaper interviewed her, and Jan had said that her motivation initially had been bringing justice to victims' families and things like that. But over recent years, she said she found a new kind of motivation, and that was in helping a different kind of victim, and that's those who were falsely accused or convicted. She said, I've been trying for a long time to really highlight how this not only finds the actual perpetrator, but it protects the person who is not guilty from going through this entire process unnecessarily.
Like Joe,
exactly. There have been more than 300 people taken off death row because of DNA evidence, and many more released from prison after lengthy sentences. She was especially inspired by James Tillman, a motivational speaker who spent 18 years in prison on a rape and kidnapping conviction. He was later exonerated by DNA evidence. So I think that's admirable that she's working so hard, not only for victims' families, but for all these people who may be wrongly convicted. And I think I saw that anywhere from 25 to 28 states have passed Katie's law or something similar at this point. So that is it. That is our episode on Katie Sepich and her horrible murder. But I know it doesn't matter I know the family would rather have their daughter, sister back, but some good has come of it.
Thanks to her mom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And any final thoughts you want to share?
Gosh, no. Okay. Not on record. Nope. I've got a lot, but no, thank you.
Okay. Well, then we will just say
good night and good luck.
Mm-hmm. And what's the other one you say?
Hug your family. Hug your loved ones.
Yeah, I like that one. Hug your loved ones.
Tell them you love them.
That's right. And
even if you don't like them.
That's true. And thank you guys for listening. Please leave us a review, and we will be back soon with a bonus episode. And we'll see you guys soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye. And if you want to see pictures of the victims, the murderers, and any additional related images, head over to our Instagram right now. Our handle across all social media platforms is death, then the letter X, and then Southwest spelled out. So DEATHX SOUTHWEST. Death X Southwest.
Death by Southwest is a Cavalry audio production.
Hosted by Jenna Schneider and Margot Carmichael.
Produced by Margot Carmichael.
Associate produced by Jenna Schneider.
Executive produced by Dana Brunetti and Keegan Rosenberger.
Audio editing and sound design by Revision Sound.
Music by Soundstripe.
And a special thanks to Edward R. Murrow for letting us borrow his famous sign-off phrase, good night and good luck.